Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise. We bring you interviews with professionals in the movement and exercise field. The goal is to provide information for other professionals and also amateur movement aficionados, people who understand that movement is part of what makes life complete. Some of the people we interview you will have heard of. They're well known in and outside of the movement and exercise profession. Others you may not have heard of, but they have a great deal of knowledge to share. Many people doing the best work spend their time working with people, not working on their social media presence. We're going to give you a chance to learn from some of these talented and knowledgeable individuals, and we're going to learn along with you. Moving to Live podcasts are going to be short. Each interview will be long enough to impart usable information, but short enough to be able to be consumed in a single bout, during your workout, commute, or even during dinner prep. We all like long-form interviews, but time is valuable. Moving to Live wants to give you the option to learn and be entertained without needing to commit 60 minutes at a time for an interview. Give Moving to Live a listen. Check out our sister podcast, FitLab PGH, which highlights people, businesses, events, and activities in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area that make movement a priority. Moving to Live would love to hear from you. Want to connect with us or have an idea for somebody you think we ought to interview? Drop us an email, mov2liv@gmail.com, or connect with us on Instagram and Twitter, both _mov2liv. We're excited to bring you these interviews, and we think you'll enjoy each and every one that we bring you. Moving to Live and our sister podcast, FitLab PGH, firmly believe that movement should be treated as a lifestyle, not just an activity. A big hat tip to Sam Brasfield, who Moving to Live interviewed on an earlier podcast, for introducing Moving to Live to Justin Matejcek. Justin is the founder of Veterans Adventure Group. It's not therapy, but Justin has a great idea and a great message and a great project for introducing veterans to outdoor adventures, where it's not just a one-time deal, but it's something that they gain the skills and potentially the tools to continue to enjoy the outdoors and moving. If you like what Moving to Live is doing, breaking down knowledge silos and bringing you interviews with different people who make movement a priority, then leave us some feedback on whatever podcast app you listen to us on. Drop us a message by email or social media to let us know what you like, potentially offer suggestions for future interviews. Justin, I understand you just recently moved from Nashville, Tennessee to Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm always curious when people make big moves like that. I know I'm not from Pittsburgh. People ask me when I meet them in Pittsburgh, like, well, why did you move here? And I say, job. Why did you move from Nashville to Salt Lake City?
It's Salt Lake City. The mountains are right outside. I drive 10 minutes and I'm actually like in the mountains out of the city here. And I've always wanted to live out west. I grew up in Minnesota. It was flat. It was really boring. And for some reason, it seems like a lot of these mountaineers come from flat parts of the country, and I'm kind of the same way. I see a hill or a mountain, and all I can think is I want to be on top of that. And Salt Lake obviously is surrounded by that. And on top of that, I'm not as active as I used to be, but I do a lot of base jumping. And so just south of here is Moab, Utah, which is a great place for base jumping. And every time I go there, it's almost like a spiritual experience. It's a weird place in general. And then just north of here, in Idaho, is the Prime Bridge, which is the only legal structure that you can base jump off of year-round. And so Salt Lake City is right in the middle of that. So it gives me a good I can go north or south and still kind of get around and do what I want to do. So
my favorite question I always like to ask guests for Moving to Live is, you meet somebody in the elevator, you're wearing your Veterans Adventure Group t-shirt or baseball cap, and they say, what is that? What's your 30-minute or 30-second elevator spiel for that?
Ultimately, we build, train, and equip small teams of veterans to thrive in extreme environments and sports. That's the gist of what we do. Our main goal is to build small teams of veterans, train them in a specific activity, give them the equipment they need to do the activity, and we all want them to be local. So that way this team can function fully self-sufficient after we work with them, doing whatever it is we teach them to do. So say it's scuba diving, we'll get them certified, get them the equipment, and that way you got 3 to 4 people who can operate kind of in that fire team mentality from the military, outside the military, do kind of with activities centered around that activity. So.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe from what Sam said when I talked to him is the idea behind your nonprofit is you don't just have the veterans get together, work as a team, do an event. You're trying to equip them so they can continue to do that sort of activity long after they finish the specific event they initially trained for.
That's correct. Yeah. Like a lot of nonprofits, and not to hate any nonprofit services, but a lot of them, they get a bunch of veterans together. You go, you have an amazing week, and then you go back and you met people from all over the country. You learn some really cool stuff, but you come back and you don't have those people to do stuff with anymore. And you learn this cool activity, but you don't have the gear or maybe even the additional know-how to continue doing it. And I look at, my time in the military, and there's a lot of stuff I really miss about the military. And one of those is that teamwork and operate in these environments that are extremely, dangerous or provoking. And these extreme sports put you back in that environment where the decisions you make matter, and you have to rely on other people in your team to do what they need to do for all of you to get through alive in many of these situations. And so it's almost bringing back the thing I enjoyed most about the military into civilian element. And that way, if you look at veterans and a lot of the issues they have, you deploy with this group of guys and you get really close with them. In my case, I spent 5 years in the same unit. I was really close to a lot of them. And after I left the military, you lose all that. And now you're kind of starting over. So why not bring that back? And sure, you can't have the same guys you serve with in the military, but there's other people in your community that have similar desires. And if we can interlace that, that's kind of our goal,
And we're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. I've found with Moving to Live, one of the best things is finding out the stories behind people, because I'm sure you didn't just wake up one morning and say, hey, this is important to me, I want to do it. So you mentioned you grew up in Minnesota, and I know I have the advantage of, prior to interviewing you, I get you to fill out a very brief questionnaire. I like to call it my cheat sheet. And clearly you treat movement as a lifestyle, not just an activity. So growing up in Minnesota, were you one of those kids who was very active? And if you were, was it because mom and dad said, get the heck out of the house and don't come back? Or was it because mom and dad were active, or you had older brothers or sisters and you kind of tagged along with them?
So it's a little bit of everything. So I actually grew up on a farm, and I like to kind of equate my childhood to growing up Amish. I wasn't actually Amish, but you would think that. I'm very well known for my ability to eat pigeons as snacks, because that's just what we had, But anyway, growing up on a farm, I actually was not able to be in any sports or stuff in school. Just, when I was very young, I was expected to get a job and start working. And I was working for my brother at his auto shop, and my brother was big into jet skiing, at a stand-up jet ski. So that kind of got me into like this whole method of, learning stand-up jet ski and how to get really good at that. And ultimately my activities centered around, they weren't sport related activities. They were just these little niches. I got really big into paintball, and there again, that's very active. And I wanted to be in the military. And at some point, like, again, I was not very big into sports like that. So, but at some point I read this book, Ultra Marathon Man. And it just resonated with me. And one thing I'll never forget about that book is they showed a picture of the Boston Marathon on there and the elevation profile compared to the Western States 100. At this point, I didn't even know the Western States 100 miler was a thing. And it pretty much just made the Boston Marathon look like a joke. And I'm not saying it is, but compared to the Western States and the elevation profile, it was something about this. If I'm going to be a runner, that's the kind of runner I want to be, And I read this book, and so just out of nowhere, I decided to get up and go and sign up for the Grandma's Marathon. And that was right after I graduated, and it's kind of at a bad time, because 2 days after the marathon, I was leaving for basic training. So my recruiters were kind of like, dude, what are you doing right here? You're going to show up to basic training and look like a soup sandwich, And again, I did not have a running background in high school, but I showed up to run the race. I was the only person out of thousands and thousands of people that wore pants, because I didn't know any better. I had my shoes that I got from Walmart. I didn't know a thing about it. And went out there and ran it. And actually, I didn't do too bad. I can't remember my time. This was back in 2006. I want to say it was under 4 hours. It was a pretty respectable time, I think, for a first-time runner. And I remember kind of getting frustrated because there's two other kids in my class that were on the track team that the local newspaper did a big story on, talking about, and actually ended up beating one of these kids, like a big track star, And of course, there's never a mention of me in the newspaper or anything, but it's not that big a deal. But that whole thing kind of got in my mind, if I want to do something, I can go out and do it. And even in training, up until then, I didn't know anything about running. The farthest I ran in training was 14 miles. I kind of like to tell myself I wanted to be surprised and see how the rest of it kind of worked out, So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. And then obviously in the military, physical fitness is centered around everything you do, so.
I think one of the things people often forget if they don't grow up on a farm, I also grew up on a farm, is you get a lot of essentially base strength and fitness from doing whatever the work is that you have to do on a farm, even though it's not quote unquote officially training.
Oh, for sure. Like moving hay bales and stuff like that. Oh, it was, growing up, I used to think it was the worst. I look back now and I'm like, goodness gracious, if I could move hay bales rather than throw on a stack of weights, I'd be thrilled, but, and even I remember as a kid, my elbows are actually kind of muscle bound. Like I can't lock my arms out because I'd have to carry these big 5-gallon buckets of water to go to water the cattle. And if I had my arms hang straight, it would drag on the ground and the water would spill. So I had to kind of like do like this little bit of a curl the entire time, just to like keep the water from spilling. And now as a result, my arms don't lock out. So, which is also became an issue in the military when I couldn't lock out my arms, push up and having to explain to them, like it literally does not, like my arms don't go straight. So,
and I think one of the interesting things of what you described, I've had a couple of people that I know professionally who talk about some of the various extreme adventure sports where they're saying, so basically people are paying to do what somebody who grew up on a farm or did construction did, and they got paid for.
Yeah. It's kind of like when people pay to go through like boot camp experiences and stuff too. It's kind of like, why would you do that? But I think it's easier when you grew up doing it, and then you can look back kind of on the crazy. But having not, had I been in a different environment, I'm sure there'd be some sort of allure to that. It'd be enticing in a way,
It loses the allure when you've done it 365 days out of the year, no matter what the weather is. I'm curious. You mentioned that you saw the Western States profile and you saw the Boston Marathon profile, and I know you spent time in Nashville, Indiana. Was there ever any thought of trying to gain admittance to the Barkley Marathon, which is also in Tennessee, or Barkley Ultra, which is the 100-mile run that, to best of my knowledge, less than 5 people have completed?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with it. I know there's something on Netflix about it too, which I probably should watch at some point. My friends keep telling me I should try it too, because I have this kind of a sick, twisted fantasy. I really want to like wind up broken and just like beaten in the middle of the woods and like having to dig as deep as I can just to push on and like move forward. And it sounds messed up, but the Barkley sounds like something that could probably deliver that. That being said, from what I understand, it's an invite only type thing. And I do not really fit in the ultra crowd per se. I'm not a runner. I do run, but I'm not a runner. It's just one thing I like to kind of wake up and whimsically do. And so I don't really, I'm not very well known in that community, even though I've gone out and done my runs,
I would say from what I've read, I am not nearly at the level to be able to qualify for it, but from what I've read, part of it is the application fee or the application essay that you have to write. So you may surprise yourself if you ever get to that point. I know I've often said if I ever got free time and I didn't have to work as much, my goal would be to do 1 lap of it and then just drop out. So I don't want to be bent and broken. I just want to say, okay, I did 1 lap. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm done.
Yeah, I would be thrilled. It's something that does, just the fact that so few people have completed it is something that really entices me. Like, people ask me all the time, like, why don't I do like Tough Mudders and all the obstacle courses things? And I have no desire in the sense that thousands of people do this and they complete it. And it's not that it's not that it's not challenging. It's a very common thing. It doesn't really set you apart. And my interest has always been in how can I be such a defined athlete where I'm doing kind of like the semi-pro levels of a bunch of different things. So not just good at running, but also good in the strength training side of it too. Just kind of a good cross athlete in general has always been my main focus. So.
And I'm curious, you ran the marathon, I think you said 2 days before you left for basic training. When you finished the marathon, was it one of those things, oh, that wasn't so bad, I'd like to do it again, and you were able to continue it after basic training? Or was it kind of you concentrated on your military career for a while, and then once you got a little more settled in the military career, you got back to the running and other physical activities not related specifically to your job in the military?
I really do not like running. And so when I got done doing that, I was like, you know what, that was stupid. I don't know why I did that. It was a good experience, but I wasn't a big fan. And, in the military I ran a lot, but what kind of got me back into running, believe it or not, and it's kind of weird, I mean, thinking about this, but when I was a team leader, I was taking one of my soldiers out for a run one morning, and he was just really sandbagging, and there's no reason for it. And I was kind of like, hey man, look, there's a stop sign a few hundred meters in front of us. I was like, I'm going to keep my pace. You just got to get caught back up to me by the time we get to that stop sign. If you don't, we're going to run 10 miles a day every single day of the week for the rest of the week. And this was a Monday. And sure enough, he didn't do it. And I was pissed myself. I'm like, son of a gun. Like, now I have to do this too, And, so we ran 10 miles every single day that week. So a total of 50. The last day pretty much broke him. He ended up pulling something, or he didn't finish. He got hurt. But after doing that, it kind of became a challenge for me. Like, I want to be able to wake up any day of the week and just go out and run a marathon. And so I kind of established a base strength to be able to do that. And then getting out of the military, I really didn't run that much out of the military. And at some point, it was one of the things where I just woke up one day and I was like, I forgot about this 100-miler thing. I was like, you know what? I want to do a 100-miler. It's been on my list of like big goals, and I'm not getting any younger. And so I looked into it, learned I had to qualify, and that's kind of what got me back into running. And even after doing that, so I did my first 50-miler to qualify, and actually did surprisingly well. I came in second place in my division, and there's kind of an odd story with that, but we won't have to go down that road. But long story short, the one person I had that was there to help me with crew, there's one stop I needed him at, he was not there. And pretty much what fueled me this entire race was thinking, I'm going to cross the finish line and punch this guy in the face. He had one job, and I was so mad. And the anger just was like, I can't wait to get there and freaking him in the face. And by the time I got there, I was so exhausted, I had no anger left in me. But I did that. So I qualified for the Pine to Palm 100, and went out and ran that, and that was miserable. It was beautiful. It was 20,000 feet of elevation gain, 20,000 feet of elevation loss. Everyone there was like, this is a very brutal course. And like when I got to mile 75, my right leg was pretty much shot. So I pretty much had to run a marathon on one leg. Not to mention I had to go up and down a big mountain in this time period. And so that was rough. And I got done with that, and I really had no desire to run. And then the next year, just out of curiosity, I was kind of like, I wonder if I could just get up and do a 50-miler, just kind of like any day of the week type thing. And I found a 50-miler up in Wisconsin, and so I signed up for it. And in my training, I'd only ran like, I kind of wrote about my thing. I'd only ran up the most distance I ran before this 50-miler was 10 miles. And in between there, I'd only ran a handful of times from that 100-miler to there. And so then doing this 50-miler with absolutely zero training, that really hurt. That hurt worse than the 100-miler. That was miserable. And then after that, it kind of became not necessarily about running, but each year I wanted to do one thing that was just exceptionally challenging to me. And that people would kind of hear me like, what are you doing, And anyway, so I've been very active doing these different challenges. And then with the nonprofit, we built an ultramarathon team. And Sam had kind of been bugging me about this 100-miler, and it just kind of became, you know what? Like I want to be able to consistently do that, And so here I am. And the fact that Sam's never done one before is extreme motivation for me. Like what really makes me get excited about fitness and activity is being part of someone else's first experience and doing something that is way beyond what they normally do. And being able to contribute to that or help motivate, like that to me is what matters more than anything, So
we're talking with Justin Matejcek. He is the founder of Veterans Adventure Group. I'm curious about how the idea for VAG came in, because I know from what you've described, you sound a lot like quite a few endurance athletes that I've known. And you're a little bit younger than some of them, and some of them just get so focused on their individual goals. They do a marathon, they do a 100-miler. Can I do a 100-miler every month? Can I do something longer than that? And you've taken something like that and channeled your interest and said, I want to have a nonprofit. So how did the idea behind Veterans Adventure Group come about? Was this something you were thinking about while you were in the military or after you got out?
Yeah, so actually, let's see, it was back in 2010. I was on my second tour in Afghanistan, getting ready to go to the military, and I had a job lined up with Triple Canopy doing private security contracting, which for doing what I did in the military is pretty much the only civilian equivalent. And I was actually thrilled. I was going to come back home. I wasn't even going to go home to like see my family. I was going to go right to their training program and go straight back to Afghanistan. But I wasn't really thrilled about it in the sense that I never joined the military for the money. And I was going to be doing a job where I'd be getting paid a large sum of money. And it's not like I'm over there fixing helicopters. You know, you're over there kind of pulling a trigger. And that's not something that really sat morally right with me. And so I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And September 18th, 2010, it was election day in Afghanistan. And I was in the lead vehicle in this convoy, and our vehicle hit an IED. And the driver ended up losing his leg. And when I was on site there, I was helping the medic keep him conscious and holding C-spine for the driver. And I didn't know the driver too well at this point. I just recently got reassigned to this different unit. And and part of the process of keeping someone conscious, you just ask them all these questions. And it turned out he was from Washington. I have no idea where it came from, but for some reason I made the connection with Washington and Mount Rainier. And we made a deal that day that we'd climb Mount Rainier together when he got back. And he didn't know he had lost his leg at this point. He couldn't feel his lower body, from what I understand. And so he made this promise. And that just hit me like, if I can do anything with my life, I want to take guys like this that, they come back and everyone feels sorry for them and views them as broken and disabled. And I want to help them do amazing feats that people with two legs would be like, oh my God, you're doing what, And that's kind of where the idea of the nonprofit came about. So I canceled my employment opportunity with Triple Canopy and ended up getting my personal training certificate, did as much as I could overseas with a focus on going and working with these wounded guys. And then I got out of the military, and I went through a really rough time getting out of the military, and everyone was quick to say, oh, PTSD, you should go to the VA. And, the reality of it was like, it's not what happened overseas that bothered me. It's about what I lost when I came back home. And it was that lack of a team and lack of a purpose. And in this time I was researching a lot of suicides, and I came across a suicide by another veteran named Justin. And reading this guy's obituary was like reading my own. And it just kind of sent chills down my spine. And all I could think was, there are so many veterans out there just like me that don't have any kind of mental or medical diagnosis from the VA. And there's no nonprofits out there that work with us because it's not sexy work, because we aren't the wounded guys that look good on TV, and you can't exploit us like you can someone that's sitting in a wheelchair, And I did come across one nonprofit that worked with any veteran who had been deployed. And I did some stuff with them, and I won't mention who they are. A great nonprofit, but kind of like I was saying earlier, they would do these retreats. You do 1 week and you go out and do something awesome. And you got guys from all over the country you're working with. And then after that, you go back home and it's back to the same old daily grind. And my thought was like, I miss that teamwork. I miss that purpose. How can I bring that back into my day-to-day life? And in this moment of just being completely kind of, I don't want to say hopeless, but really miserable, I got into mountain biking, and that kind of changed my perspective. And I found that community around mountain biking. And that's where the whole grand master plan for Veterans Adventure Group came up. Originally I was trying to work with other nonprofits, and that was a very frustrating experience trying to work with other nonprofits for various list of reasons. So like, screw it, I'll just do my own, and that's kind of where we built into. And I couldn't be more excited to see, 4 years ago when we founded this, to start with 4 guys climbing Mount Rainier. And last year we just took over 30 veterans up Mount Rainier, so in a period of 4 years, we've done drastic amount of work. I think I kind of got off on a little tangent there, but there's a lot to how I got started with the Veterans Adventure Group and why we do what we do. So
I'm curious if you can think back as far as when the idea started to really gel in your head. Do you remember, was it actually while you were on the mountain bike? Because I know I've talked to a number of people who said, and I would include myself in this group, I talk to myself sometimes. Some of my best ideas come when I'm moving, because I don't know what it is. It's kind of the rhythmic action of whatever it is. It's like, things you don't think about if you're just sitting there. So I'm just curious if that was the case in your instance.
I don't remember specifically when it came to me starting my own thing. I do remember there was one night I was kind of in my misery. I sat down at the kitchen table and I made a list of everything bothering me. And I was able to sum that up into the lack of teamwork, or the lack of a team, and lack of purpose. And that kind of set the foundation for me needing to find a way to bring that back. And then I'm not sure if early, I never remember a big aha moment, but I do know that even while I'm in school and stuff, a lot of times when I study, I go for a run with my flashcards, or I go to the gym, and in between sets I look at my flashcards. And it's been a surprisingly extremely effective way for me to study. Or if I get stuck on a math problem, I go out and I go for a run, and suddenly I come back and I look at it from a different perspective. And exercise has always been something that's increased my ability to think drastically,
We're talking with Justin Matejcek. He is the founder of Veterans Adventure Group. I think you've given a really good description of how you decided to found the Veterans Adventure Group. I'm curious how veterans find you. I know that there are some large nonprofits, and we don't need to name call or call some of them out. But there's a veteran who maybe is like you. They just got out. They really don't want to go in and do private security work. They know they miss that sense of teamwork, that sense of unity. How would somebody like that come across the Veterans Adventure Group?
So Facebook is an easy way to find us, but how we've spread our word is through word of mouth. And that's something I really take a lot of value for, in the sense that if someone went through our program and they feel so great about it that they can go back and tell other people and recommend it, that's the best kind of stamp of approval I could ever ask for. And honestly, we don't do much marketing trying to find veterans. We have more veterans reach out to us than we can handle. And veterans really come to us. And I would argue one thing that we are very unique about in how we do is we don't view veterans as broken, and we don't have any kind of stipulation. As long as you serve with an honorable discharge, we'll work with you. And we don't come across as a therapeutic group. And the big thing that's always been frustrating for me is everyone associates, exercise and activity with therapy. And that's fine. And I'm not saying it's not a therapeutical thing. But why does a veteran going on a mountaineering trip, why does it have to be therapeutical? Why can't it just be they want to go out there and do something amazing? There's nothing, it doesn't mean they're broken or anything like that. And, initially when I first started this, a lot of veterans would be like, oh, no, that's not for me. I'm not wounded. I don't have, PTSD or anything. And it's like, no, man, it's for you. It's for all of us. And just because you don't have these issues doesn't mean you're not a veteran. It doesn't mean you aren't someone that want to serve. It doesn't mean you don't miss having that team and that purpose that you had in the military. And so I think that approach has made it very easy for veterans to want to approach us, knowing that if they approach us, it's not going to be us sitting there talking, oh, hey, we're going to heal you or make you better. It's, hey, man, you want to do awesome shit? We're going to help you do awesome shit. And sorry for the cussing there, but that's just the reality of it, is we want to help veterans get out there and be badasses again, And
one could almost argue it's almost, for some of them, an adjunct of therapy. They may be undergoing therapy or getting treatment for some problem they have. And this is kind of, you're reminding them, hey, maybe you have these problems, but it doesn't mean you can't do awesome things and have fun and enjoy life again.
And that's exactly true. And we've had a lot of veterans that there's one veteran, I won't go through names, but he went in our skydiving program. When I first met him, you could barely hold a conversation with him. He was so paranoid, just not in queue with what was going on. And he was being treated for PTSD under a lot of medication. And for our skydiving program, instead of just taking people on a tandem, we actually get them licensed to skydive and get them gear to help them keep jumping. And, he did this. This is about 3 years ago when we went through our program. He is such a different person today. He's off his medications. He still sees a therapist, but not nearly on the same frequency as he used to. And it's crazy how something so simple just completely brought out a whole different side of this veteran. And it's stuff like that really kind of hits me in the feels, because, it's kind of crazy to realize when you take a step back and was like, you've started something that has really actually changing people's lives in a way. And that's just one I know about, There's other veterans who their spouse have reached out to me saying like, hey, this guy has went out and did this with you guys. Like he's doing so much better. He's just in a completely different space. And the fact that we could do all that, and at no point was we thought like, hey man, you're broken and we're going to help you. It's simply a matter of like, we know you're already amazing. We know you're awesome. We're just going to put you back in the environment that brings back out the best version of yourself, you know?
I know I'm not former military, but I think you could make the argument that it doesn't matter whether you're former military, active military, non-military. All of us have our demons or our problems, some worse than others. And there's always a tendency to focus on those things and not focus on the stuff, which, as you said, do cool shit.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, I mean, and I will say, like, one thing I do love about ultras is I call, when I do my ultras in my mind, I like to say I'm going to battle with my demons, you know, because, you know, in the day-to-day, it's easy to kind of tuck that stuff away in the back of your brain. But when you're so exhausted and just beat, those things that haunt you come back to you. And I thoroughly have known to be running on the trail, bawling my eyes out, thinking like, you know, and it is a process. But, and yeah, whether you're a veteran or civilian, I think, you know, even though the experiences that get us there may be different, the outcome and the feelings that we have are very similar. And I don't think it's healthy to create a divide between veterans and civilians. I think we both are dealing with the same emotions, just with a different process that got us experiencing that in the first place, you know?
Veterans Adventure Group, I know from the bio that you filled out and from what Sam told me, you do a variety of activities. How do you come up with the activities that you offer for veterans? So I know you've mentioned Rainier. I know you and Sam are doing a 100-miler after skydiving out of an airplane. Is this something that veterans come to you, or you develop a program and then you try to fit the veterans that have contacted you into these particular activities?
It's kind of both. So a lot of it does come from veterans that come to us. We have a lot of veterans that reach out, you know, from an area, and they're like, hey, I really want to learn how to do this. And at that point, we kind of, you know, all right, let's find a few other people in your area that also want to learn how to do it. And then we'll build a team around that, you know. And that's one way that we come up with this stuff. Other ways, it's just through connections that I have. You know, like we had one guy who he applied for the skydiving team, and after going through the interview and stuff, he's like, you know, I don't think this is really for me. However, he now runs a drag racing team for us, which is awesome. You know, which is kind of cool because that's a whole nother level where, you know, you got veterans who may not be physically capable of some of this extreme stuff, but they love to sit back and drink beer and crank wrenches, you know, and that's awesome. That builds that purpose and community because, you know, everything they do to that car matters when they run it down that strip, you know, and, you know, so yeah, but ultimately a lot of it, veterans come to us, and some of it is stuff that is unique to an area. So like out here in Salt Lake City, I'm working with a company out here to get a paragliding program going, you know, and the cool thing there is we can also we just recently brought in an adaptive component, which does like you know, ski clinics for guys in wheelchairs, fishing trips, boating trips. They even have a wakeboard for wheelchair bound veterans, which is pretty awesome. But you know, we can do paragliding with guys in wheelchairs too. And it's yeah, so we just kind of think of different things that are enticing. And I happen to have a very big network of veterans, and they're always like, hey, when are you going to start offering this or that? And so when people ask about it, I figure out a way that we can make it happen and try to find people in the industry that will support it. So.
I'm curious with the various veterans that do it. I know one of the things you do is you equip them so if it's an activity that they really not necessarily buy into, but they really enjoy, they have the skills to do it afterwards. I know you mentioned, for example, with the skydiving, you get them licensed to do it rather than saying, hey, you're going to climb on me and skydive down with me. Was that a conscious choice based on experiences from talking to past veterans or seeing what other nonprofits have done? Or is this just something that kind of in your mind, it's like, you know, this is what I should do?
Yeah. So for one, most nonprofits, when it comes to skydiving, for example, just want to throw you out of a plane. It's that one-time experience. It's not really what we are. We do offer it. We have a Remy jump program for like older veterans who are not interested, or wounded veterans who can't actually skydive solo. So we do offer that. But a lot of it comes into, you know, veterans want to do this stuff, but most of these extreme sports they have a barrier cost. It costs a lot to get into. You know, skydiving is not cheap. It's $1,500 for AFF, another $1,000 to get to your A license. So at $2,500 just to get to your A license, and then your rig, you're looking about $5,000 right there. So most veterans don't have $7,500 sitting around, or most people in general don't. You know, and so if we can help with that barrier cost to get people through that. After that, skydiving is pretty cheap. Once you have your gear, it only costs me about $27-$30 a jump, you know? And so at that point it becomes very affordable. Same with mountaineering and so forth too. It's just getting the gear to begin. A lot of people don't know where to start, and it's a big investment. So if we can take away that cost So, and give you the people to keep doing that with, I have no problems supplying veterans with whatever gear we can.
And I'm curious, I know you mentioned with mountaineering, is it only Rainier that you do, or you're looking at other mountains, or have you done other mountains also?
So Rainier is like our flagship climb. That's when we bring out tons of veterans. We make a big deal of it. We do Mount Adams and Mount Hood, and we are really excited for 2020. We're offering Denali as a nonprofit program. And so one of the guys that's been helping with our mountaineering program, him and I went out and climbed Denali this last May. That was my big feat for the year. And that's kind of a comical story in a sense there too, and a little tangent, but we get out there in Denali, and there's just two of us, and we're moving pretty good. And most people do about 21 days to a month on Denali. And we had 16 days that we had to be off the mountain. And so you fly out there and you land, and 16 days later, like, we had to be leaving no matter what. So we're already kind of behind time-wise. We got out there, we got to our base camp at 14,000 feet, and we felt really good. We got there on day 4. And so we decided, like, we'd take one rest day, and there's a weather window. So we're like, you know what? Like, why don't we try to climb this mountain on day 6? And we got the weather window, and, like, we didn't want to be out there. Like, as much as people like to, like, talk about how great of an experience, mountaineering really sucks, You're getting fried in the middle of, like, when you're in the sun, you're literally sweating, you're like crazy. And as soon as the sun disappears, you're freezing. And it's very hard to, like, rationalize that you're so hot on the middle of a glacier. But so we tried to summit on day 6, and everything was going great, but there was a storm forecasted to come in that night. And the storm kind of came in early, and we were above, we would be just shy of, we're about 19,000 feet up. And our camp was back at 14,000 feet. The storm came in, and there's one group ahead of us. They decided to turn around. At this point, there were only 2 people on the mountain above, 17,000 feet, the last base camp. And when the weather's bad, no one comes to get you. Like, you're out there. And so we decided, like, all right, we should probably turn around. And we turn around, and we're heading back down. And at this point, our goggles are all iced up. We can't see. And things just really took a turn for the worse. And we finally got back down to a high camp at 17,000 feet. But we still had to go to 14. But we had a minute to kind of, like, catch our breath. And the end of the day was about there. And at this point, we had been going for about 18 hours. I'd only drank a half Nalgene bottle of water. The rest of it was frozen. I hadn't eaten anything all day. And so we're extremely just deprived of all of our nutrients, water. And we hadn't slept much either. And ended up spending nearly 26 hours from when we stepped off till I got back to our camp at 14,000 feet. But there's a section where we have to go down. It's called the head wall, and there's these fixed ropes. And my descending device ended up freezing up, and I'm stuck on this rope. And my partner, Austin, he was equally as miserable. He was on a different rope and was able to get down faster. And so I kind of was like, look, man, go back to camp. There's no point in him, getting hypothermia or frostbite waiting on me, And I'm just hanging on this rope against this ice wall thinking, like, someone's got to come and get me. Like, and no one's going to come get me till the morning. So I'm just thinking, like, I'm going to have to freeze here for the next 8 hours until someone realizes that there's some dude hanging from this rope up there. And finally get off this rope, and I am just completely miserable. And I had some snow blindness from earlier because when our goggles froze up, I kind of had to lift my goggles up. And I'm walking on this really steep hill, and there's this big crevasse that I have to jump over. And I couldn't see the other side of the crevasse. I knew it wasn't that wide. So I leap across this crevasse, end up tumbling halfway down, get a crampon stuck in my butt. It was just miserable. And I kind of, finally pop back up, covered in snow. And it was by far one of, like, the top 3 hardest moments in my life, just to take another step. And I would walk a few steps and sit down. And all I could think about is how much I just wanted to face plant in the snow, and someone will find me at some point, And finally got back to camp, and ended up getting a horrible infection in my leg, got extremely sick. And we ended up recovering, and went back and summited on day 11, which that in itself, most people do one summit attempt. And for us to do 2 summit attempts, one of them being from 14,000 feet, people were kind of looking at us like, what's wrong with you, We did it, not to mention I have this infection, and, like, I am extremely sick this entire time. But I will say, like, that day 6, like, that's what I remember about that climb, just because I love that it's hard to explain. In the moment, it's miserable, but looking back, like it literally just took everything in my body to take another step and then one more step and you just keep going and going. And like, there's something so addicting about being so vulnerable like that, you know?
I know that there are some people who classify levels of fun, and I think they classify the highest level of fun of when you're absolutely miserable, but you look back and you say, oh, that was a really good time. I really enjoyed that. So you may not have enjoyed it in the moment, but now looking back, it's like, oh, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was quite the time. But yeah, and not to get too sidetracked from the question. But yeah, so we're bringing Denali in for 2020 for the nonprofit, which we're thrilled about. We got 9 veterans we're taking up for that. And then we're constantly adding peaks. We got interest in El Dorado Peak and the Grand Teton. So as long as I can find some people to help me lead these, we'll be having a busy summer climbing these mountains. So.
And I know you've mentioned that you and my friend Sam Brasfield are doing a 100-miler. Is one of the things you do with the veterans, do you train with veterans to run a 100-miler or run ultra races? Or is it more what you think of as the extreme type things that don't, I can't say they don't last as long because Denali would last longer than that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends on what the veterans are interested in. On the ultra marathon that's coming up, the 100-miler, we are recruiting for other veterans to join us. We did have some initial ones, but one of them ended up getting into law school. So that kind of took her out of the running. And we got another guy who's not a veteran, but he's a big supporter of ours. His name is Thor. He's going to be trying to run 100-milers, the 100-miler while we're doing it, but he's going to be in Minnesota in the middle of winter doing this. He has more of a challenge than I could ever even imagine compared to what we're doing there in sunny Florida. But with all this, you know, a lot of times the veterans, if I can, I'll build a training program for them and kind of help them with that. If they're local, I'll run with them and as much as I can. Like I said, I really get my high off of helping other people do amazing things, you know? It's like just knowing Sam, knowing this is his first 100-miler, that is my driving motivation. No matter what happens, I can't be the reason he can't complete it, you know? So I need to make sure I'm there every step. Like, hey, man, we got this. And, you know, but yeah, if Sam's got a training program he's working on, but with a lot of these other ones, especially mountaineering, veterans are constantly asking for training plans, and I'm always writing up plans and helping with nutrition and stuff like that, just to get them on track to understand the stresses they're going to have and how to train appropriately.
And do you have veterans who come back and do a different adventure with you every year? Because I know you said your goal is to do one big thing yourself each year. Do you have some veterans that they've done an event and they're like, man, this has changed my life. I want to come back and do one big event with your organization each year? Or is it one and maybe they go on and develop training programs or develop new lifestyles? So, and obviously the veterans that kind of getting the team side of it, they keep doing this stuff pretty frequently. In terms of the bigger events, we have a lot of repeat users that can't wait for the next year, and they're always out there. I've yet to find anybody who's probably stupid enough is a better response to try to do the same stuff I do every year. I call it like, I have like my tag team. Like, I have my veterans that are big rock climber, or I shouldn't say veterans, but I have my rock climber friends, I have my running friends, I have my mountaineering friends. And as soon as I'm done with one, I jump into the next one. So like they each just kind of run me ragged. But yeah, I've yet to find someone who is willing to do the various activities with me. Like one of them was paddleboarding the entire Mississippi River, like stuff like that. Like it's, you know, the guy that I did that with, you know, he would have no desire to, well, I shouldn't say he does want to do a lot of this other stuff. It's going to take him a little bit different training to get there, you know? But yeah, if there's someone out there that wants to try a bunch of different crazy challenges every year, the next one I'm looking for is I really want to cross Antarctica. I told you about that. I had to buy a negative 40-degree sleeping bag to do Denali, and I'm pretty burnt because it costs about $800. And so I'm thinking like, I got to get my use of this. And so I got to do some really cold, long trips. So I think crossing Antarctica is probably in my distant future. And Colin O'Brady did it, and it's kind of like, you know what, like this would be a worthy challenge. So I'm curious of these variety of events. Are there any that you've done and completed and it's like, okay, I'm done with this sort of activity. I've done it. I've checked it off the box. I have no interest in doing this again.
You know, I thought running was going to be like that, but it has a sneaky way of creeping up on me. Like, you know, that was miserable, but maybe it would be worth another shot. The Mississippi River thing, unfortunately, we had to stop a little bit early because my buddy was injured and so he had to get surgery for that. So, but I cannot wait to get back on the river. You know, the more I do, the more it opens my eyes And it really just makes me want to do more of it or get more people involved more. That's really the better way to put it is after I've done it, the biggest motivator is now how can I find other people that want to do it and help them do it? That's really where it lies. So even though I'm not necessarily thrilled to run another 100-miler, I'm thrilled to be there for Sam as we run 100 miles together. And any other veteran that approaches me about it, it's like, well, hell yeah, I'll do it with you kind of thing, So
Moving to Live is with Justin Matejcek. He is the founder of Veterans Adventure Group. I like that you mentioned that one of the reasons that you do these things and do the training is because oftentimes for some of these activities, there's a significant outlay of cash before you become equipped to do it. I know that's very common in a variety of activities. If there's a veteran listening to this or somebody listening who has a friend who's a veteran, I think the question is also going to be, well, if you go and do Denali, I know that's quite expensive. What does it cost a veteran to do this? Or is this something that's sponsored?
So we do, on the veteran side, we require a $500 deposit. And the main thing there is there's a lot of permits and stuff we have to pull well before the climb. And we just can't have people backing out after we put this money into it. The permit alone is about $400, not to mention the flights and all the stuff that go into it. So, but most of our trips or stuff, there's usually a deposit of some sort, which goes straight to the trip. It's not something that we profit off or anything like that. And then we sponsor the rest of it, So we're, for like Denali, for example, the cost is estimated to come out to about $14,000 for 9 people. Now, if you were to go with a guided group, it's almost going to cost, depending on the group, it could cost anywhere from like $6,000 to $20,000 for one person. So where we kind of get around is, for one, we are not mountaineering guides, and we are not trying to take that role. We are happy to lead people on an unguided trip, being that we're familiar with the mountain. And then we do have a whole stockpile of gear, so we provide the gear and all that as well. The only thing we don't provide is clothing, just because we can't stock a bunch of different sizes, and everybody's a little bit different. So we do everything we can to supply them with the gear. In terms of once they get, we usually don't cover travel either, only because there again, if we pay for travel and you don't show up, we can't recoup that anyway. So you show up and we pretty much take the veteran from there, and there's no more cost associated with it. So Denali is already filled up, but most of our climbs, like Rainier, for example, there's a $50 deposit, which goes straight to your permit. And after that, you show up and we get you to our host family's house, which we have the time of our life at. This last year, we had almost 40 veterans going through this house up there. And our host families have been amazing. These are just volunteers that want to support the cause. And we'll take them up there. We provide all the gear. We have most of the clothing, too, that we can kind of fit and match for people that aren't experienced. And we do a whole school up there, so we train them everything they need to know in terms of, what they need to know to climb this particular mountain and so forth. So veterans that are interested, as long as you're willing to step up to the plate and pay a little bit to get to where you need to go, we'll make it happen from there. But there does need to be some sort of a buy-in or commitment from the veteran that they really want to do this. Unfortunately, there's a lot of veterans out there that are just looking for free stuff. And there's a lot of veterans that are quick to – it can be – this is a very sensitive subject, but there's a term called kind of veteran entitlement. And a lot of veterans expect everything to be free for them. And that's not true. If you really want to get out there and climb mountains, you should be willing to pull some weight. If you want to go out there and learn how to kiteboard, you should be willing to make some sacrifices to do that. And that doesn't necessarily need to be financial, but it can be helping to volunteer for other things and so forth too. And I've really learned in my experience, if you can't find $50 to go out and put the deposit on to climb Mount Rainier, your priority should not be climbing a mountain at that point, So you're giving them a helping hand, not a free gift. Exactly.
We're talking with Justin Matejcek of Veterans Adventure Group. I think the other thing that I'm very interested in, because I know you mentioned this, that when you left the military, you didn't have any visible scars, you weren't missing limbs, you hadn't had serious injuries, like physical injuries like that. Are there veterans who contact you who have these injuries, maybe limb losses or other severe injuries, where you look at it and say, I just don't think they can do what this particular trip, or has that not arisen yet?
So we have a lot of veterans that do have some other sort of complications that may come up. However, we're very determined to find a way to make it work. For example, we have a veteran who's in a wheelchair who we're working on getting their Class A skydiving license. They actually used to skydive in the past, and then they got injured, and we're working on getting them back out there. Where there's a will, there's a way, and we're going to figure it out. It also, right now I'm currently studying biomedical engineering, and part of that goes into when we come into these issues, there's an easy sidetrack of an example here is my buddy, when he was climbing Mount Rainier with us, his leg fell off multiple times. And when your leg's falling off, 13,000 feet up on a glacier and you're all roped up, that's not a good spot for your leg to be falling off, And all I can think is there's got to be a better way. We had another issue with caving, getting people out of these caves. They have to ascend up the rope. And a guy with a prosthetic leg was having some issues, and he's able to make it work, but there's got to be a better way. But if we have yet to completely deny someone the ability to do something, honestly, if a guy in a wheelchair, wanted to climb Mount Rainier with us, we'd probably find a way to put him in a pack and we'd haul him up if it came down to it. We're pretty determined. But we've yet to reject someone based off an injury. However, if for some reason we truly just cannot do it because of safety reasons, we're going to do everything we can to find other avenues that they could consistently do. Again, this really is centered, there is an aspect of the experience there, but this really is centered around finding a long-term thing that veteran's capable of doing, independently of the nonprofit. So
we've had the good fortune to talk to Justin Matejcek of Veterans Adventure Group. He talks about giving veterans the tools to not only do a single time of an extreme adventure, but the tools to recognize that this is something that's actually fun and can be a regular part of their life. I think it's really great that he identifies the fact that he's not doing therapy, although we talked a little bit about the fact that as an adjunct, this can potentially benefit therapy or just make people understand that whatever sort of movement, whether it's skydiving, climbing mountains, running in the woods, it has the opportunity to really enhance the quality of life. Justin, I want to thank you for taking time to talk to Moving to Live. I know that Sam will probably have some great stories to tell you on the 100-mile runs, although you've probably heard some of them already with some of your runs that you did when you were both living in Nashville.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun runs, and we talked about all sorts of interesting stuff. So, and I appreciate you having me on the show here. So.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of Moving to Live. Make sure you check out the show notes for contact information for our latest guest, as well as links about all the things we talked about. Intro and exit music is Traveling Light by Jason Shaw. You can subscribe to Moving to Live on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play, and be notified about new episode releases. Have any questions, comments, or suggestions? Drop us an email, mov2liv@gmail.com. Connect with us on Twitter or Instagram, both _mov2liv. Please tell your friends about Moving to Live. It's a go-to place for information for movement and exercise professionals and amateur aficionados who understand that movement is part of what makes your life complete. Until next week, keep on moving.